So I think we will start now. And as I said, I know people will be coming in shortly as well. So we're really, really lucky today to have Dr. Natalia Grincheva, to give us our final lecture in research methods. So I think going out with a bang is perhaps a colloquial phrase we can use in this. She's looking at, as I said, cultural analytics and data-intensive research. So her research is in the field of digital humanities and focusing on the development of new computational methods to study museums as important players in creative economy and actors of soft power. And we have spent quite a bit of time in our course so far, both in cultural policy and in research methods, thinking about the concept of soft power. So putting that into conversation with the issues of data, and particularly in museums, and thinking about cultural repatriation as well, for example, is a really, really interesting approach. Dr. Grincheva is the holder of numerous awards and fellowships, including the Fulbright, Quebec Fund, Australian Endeavour, and others. And she's implemented a number of research projects on new forms of contemporary diplomacy by largest internationally recognized museums in North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. She's a number of books, including 2 monographs, one from 2019 and 2020. I'm so impressed. And for today, we were reading her article on her project with one specific museum, and she's going to give us some more detail on her work today. So I hope that we will all have time for questions at the end. Dr. Grincheva will speak for approximately 45 minutes, and then we will have some time for questions and answers afterwards. I'd suggest that we all have our cameras and speakers off while Natalia is presenting, just for feedback, if that's okay. So I'll turn off my video shortly. So welcome, Natalia, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Maria, for such a lovely introduction. And hello, everybody. I'm delighted to give this lecture on cultural analytics and data-intensive research. In my lecture today, I would like to demonstrate how to employ big data analytics as an advanced methodology to address various tasks and questions in arts and cultural management research. I'm particularly excited to share with you some examples of a successful employment of such methods as digital mapping, data visualization, and digital storytelling. So Maria mentioned that we will have a Q&A session in the end, but while you're listening to me today, if you have a question in mind, please put it into chat so we don't miss any of your valuable thoughts or ideas that you wanted to share during the presentation. So, specifically, my lecture today is based on the presentation of my own practice-based creative research project. And I will focus on 3 stages of the project progression from mere data aggregation to data intelligence. The first section, data aggregation, will expose a wide diversity of various data sets to discuss challenges of their consistent collection. The second part, data visualization, will focus on deep mapping methodology that allows to explore complex cultural phenomena on different levels of analysis. And finally, the section data intelligence will share preliminary results of exploiting machine learning and algorithmic modeling to advance cultural analytics to generate new knowledge and critical insights. Since 2011, the term big data has been exponentially spreading in the academic scholarship and the media. The Oxford English Dictionary defines it as a data of a very large size, typically to the extent that its manipulation and management present significant logistical challenges. Big data presents a twofold framework. On the one hand, it includes a large volume of data, reaching in some cases hundreds and thousands of terabytes generated in a very short time. On the other hand, it draws on quantitative analysis and visualization to identify meaningful patterns in order to create new knowledge. Research in big data analytics focuses on large or dense data sets, which call for new processing and interpretation methods. Specifically, this computer-based methodology allows a bird's eye view at large corpora of data to identify new patterns and gain valuable insights. Lev Manovich defines this intersection between data science and humanities research as cultural analytics. He defines it as analysis of massive cultural data sets and flows using computational and visualization techniques. This approach converts a mere data collection into a focused data analysis based on visual patterns recognition. This visualization and scalable interaction with the visualized material allows researchers to gain new insights about regularities and disruptions that create new knowledge about various cultural phenomena. In traditional digital humanities disciplines, many scholars employed computing to analyze historical artifacts and digitize data sets of large corpora of cultural materials for quite a while. In the past decade, though, the use of quantitative computational analysis in humanities outside of the historical framework has been steadily growing. In my presentation today, I specifically focus on the practice-based research project that stands outside of the historically oriented digital humanities. Instead, it finds its inspiration in cultural analytics, in the sense that it is based on aggregating, exploring, analyzing, and visualizing big data generated by contemporary museums to ask and answer critical questions about their current and future audiences, institutional relationships, as well as cultural, social, and even economic impacts at home and abroad. I will share with you the results of the project developed in collaboration with the Australian Centre for the Moving Image in Melbourne to create a first-in-the-world dynamic web application that can measure and map museum soft power. Let me tell you a few words about ACME first. Having its roots in the State Film Center, first established in 1946, ACME was founded in 2002 to house the nation's largest collection of moving image documents, including films, verb content, gaming, digital art, objects, as well as other hybrid forms of digital media. A young, dynamic, and ambitious institution, ACME in the past 2 decades managed to develop a large audience, reaching most recently up to 2.5 million visitors to its local programs and touring international exhibitions. As a partner in the project, ACME provided access to its historical institutional records, including multiple data sets across its collections, visitation, programming, and exhibitions for the last 15 years. More importantly, it offered a stimulating infrastructure and institutional support for such an industry engagement research project. Specifically, this project contributed to research activities unfolded in the framework of ACME X Museum Incubator, an innovative research hub for Melbourne's creative practitioners, digital artists, producers, designers, web developers, and creative startuppers. In 2016, ACME partnered with the University of Melbourne, where I work, to support academics, doctoral students, and early career researchers to join ACME X Incubator Space to work on their own digital practice-based research projects. And my project on visualization of museums of power has become one of the exemplar models that emerged out of this cross-disciplinary collaboration. Contributing to the growing scholarship on cultural mapping, the project employed geovisualization, data mining, and digital storytelling to develop a deep mapping application that can demonstrate museum global influence across several key layers of soft power, from mere resources to social outputs to economic outcomes. This system correlates multiple sets of museum collections, visitation, programming, and revenue data with demographic statistics and cultural analytics of specific locations, understanding them as politically, culturally, and economically defined locales. Let me show you a short video demo of the application. At the University of Melbourne, we've created a way for the first time to visually map and measure the soft power of museums. We have collaborated with the Australian Centre for the Moving Image to globally map ACME's resources, outputs, and outcomes. The system maps the data in 5 layers. The first layer maps Acme International Collection appeal power based on culture and language. The more intense the green, the greater the appeal power. As you can see, the collection appeals strongly in North America, Europe, and the Asia Pacific. The second layer is online engagement power, and it maps Acme's online global audiences. The varied intensity of the blue indicates that the majority of these audiences are coming from developed countries in Europe and North America. The Asia Pacific appears relatively untapped. If we move down, we come to the global connectivity power layer. And here we map Acme's relationship with 180 organizations around the world. We can see that Acme is strongly connected with museums in the United States and many European countries. Its relationships in the Asia Pacific are still emerging. The next layer, local engagement power, maps the international tours of Acme exhibitions. It correlates visitation data with multiple variables across different sets of data. Finally, we have the Melbourne engagement power layer that maps Acme's local audiences. Here a map of Melbourne is divided into 200 postcodes. We can see from the intensity of the green that the majority of Acme's audiences come from the central area in the city. So there you have it. Acme mapped across various dimensions of soft power, providing the museum with the key information for strategic planning and development. You can see the link to the actual application, which is available online, so you can explore it at the time of your convenience. However, I will use in my presentation today only screenshots from this demo application because it's easier to walk you through all these layers of soft power and to explain what methods did I use and how they helped me to explore this very complex phenomenon of museum soft power. So let me start by explaining a little bit more. Maria already mentioned that you in your coursework you encountered the concept of soft power, but let me tell you maybe a little bit more. Soft power is the term first coined by American professor of international relations, Joseph Nye, to describe the ability of a country to influence behavior of others through persuasion, attraction, or agenda setting. And Nye argues that this new type of power offers an alternative solution to address the complexity of international relations by employing culture as the foundation of international influence upon other societies. A country on the international stage can achieve influence by building networks, communicating compelling narratives, establishing international rules, and drawing on the resources that make a country naturally attractive to the world. A nation's soft power is increasingly subject to measurement with the Portland Soft Power Authority or Global Power City Index reports providing evidence of this trend. These initiatives have generated a series of global indicators based on culture, education, science, politics, and economy to annually assess the extent to which nations have risen through or declined upon these indices. Challenging these attempts to measure soft power, my research reconfigures the framework of soft power evaluations by stressing three important points that have been overlooked in previous research. First, I propose to combine various methods of soft power evaluations that previously were used separately. These approaches include resources, outputs, outcomes, perceptions, and networks evaluation models. Through my research, I developed a new integrative approach that can comprehensively combine different methods to construct a more advanced tool to measure soft power. Furthermore, I employ the cause-effect model to frame various approaches of soft power evaluation because it allows to better present a two-directional process of soft power transmission from an agent of power to its subjects. In order to assess soft power, on the one hand, it is necessary to evaluate agents' resources, capabilities, and behaviors. On the other hand, the assessment should include analysis of perceptions, affections, and responses of the subject. Second, I argue that previously proposed evaluation approaches could be improved through mapping. I employ specially oriented software represented by the Geographic Information System to map and visualize soft power geographical spread and reach, an important variable that is usually missing in existing evaluation dashboard systems. It is not productive to measure soft power in general terms, assuming that the power appeal of a particular country or actor is the same in different geographic locations. Instead, I employ cultural analytics and city statistics of a specific location and look at secondary factors, for example, cultural diversity and vibrancy, local language and religion, to evaluate the soft power appeal to people living in this particular area. Finally, I argue that measuring soft power of a whole country is misleading, since these evaluations don't take into consideration the multifaceted and complex nature of different and very often competing actors within the country who generate and exert different degrees of soft power upon global publics. Instead, I focus on museums as important actors in the international arena, which has their distinctive identities, brands, audiences, and followers. In the era of digital globalizations, museums are rapidly transforming from publicly funded cultural heritage repositories to key actors of creative economy and new centers of soft power, exerting strong economic and social impacts. Finally, my project addressed a need in the cultural sector to develop a reliable assessment framework that, on the one hand, values qualitative methodological approaches and, on the other hand, is capable of visualizing cultural impacts. A multi-layered mapping used in the verb application redirects the focus of attention from simplistic quantitative assessments to geography of museum outreach and influence. Moreover, it allows a visualization of museum global ecosystem, exposing rich connections, complex networks, and diverse areas of impacts. The deep mapping project offered a middle ground between data-intensive quantification of cultural impacts and creative and narrative through mapping and digital storytelling that can provide deeper insights into specific aspects beyond the macro analysis of big data. Let me now move on to explore the project on 3 stages of data-intensive research development, from data aggregation to intelligence. So data aggregation deals with collecting a large-scale corpus of different types of data. This data ranges from digitized artifacts or born digital objects in possession of museums, for example, libraries or cultural archives, to text, image, audio, or even geospatial data generated by users who interact with these objects either online, in closed digital environments, or on-site through different mobile applications. This interconnected digital data could be extremely diverse, big, and even fuzzy, and likely to be in continuous expansion. The confrontation with this massive data calls for an important question. What can really be extracted from these huge data sets, and what interpretations can be drawn based on these extractions? My deep mapping project started exactly from this point of identifying, categorizing, exploring, and collecting different institutional data sets that could be further analyzed and visualized. The multi-layered mapping project aims to produce a system that allows users to assess and visualize the influence of ACME on several interconnected levels. As you can see from the slide, it included mapping the museum collections, digital and physical audiences, international network of institutional connections and partnerships, as well as local impacts of ACME touring exhibitions. Such multi-layered geovisualization task required a focused work with a large number of different sets of data, collected not only from the institution itself, through various databases like Digital Collection Catalog, Google Analytics, ticket sales system, or even annual institutional reports. But also I collected data generated outside the organization itself. For example, one of the key layers is Melbourne Engagement Power Layer. It allows users to explore Acme attraction power to local audiences in Melbourne. On the one hand, it draws on the ticket sales data provided by Acme from 2011 until 2017 inclusive. This data combines quantitative information on ticket sales with geospatial data collected from Acme visitors by soliciting postcodes of their home locations. On the one hand, the layer maps social demographic and cultural analytics data of urban neighborhoods across 200 postcodes in Melbourne. Not only this data overlay helps identify where the majority of Acme audiences or ticket purchasers come from, it also eliminates who these people are, what languages they speak, or what religion they practice, among other characteristics. To draw this profile, the verb application aggregates and maps multiple sets of Australian census data, including social demographic and immigration statistics, cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity data. For example, one of the most involved Acme neighborhoods with up to 65% of local engagement power index is Little Italy, or the Italian precinct, located at famous Logan Street in Melbourne and mostly known as the Italian community. It is situated in the suburb of Carlton with postcode 3057, and according to 2016 census data, apart from English, Italian language is the most spoken in the neighborhood, and the local population composition includes 11% of families with Italian ancestry and 4% of first-generation Italians, with many arrived most recently in 2015. According to the social demographic profile, the Italian community is a home of quite wealthy population of younger age, up to 39, with their high education degrees and professional affiliations. These demographic insights partially explain why Acme welcomes so many Little Italy residents to its doors in the past decade. The museum dedicated programming implemented in the past several years to celebrate the Italian culture and heritage proved to be quite productive in terms of increasing ticket sales from the neighborhood. For instance, in 2016, Acme co-organized the Melbourne International Film Festival to celebrate Italian screen culture, featuring the vast collection of Italian feature films. The same year, it convened a special event, an Italian voyage through Melbourne, bringing together Melbourne famous writers, politicians, and cultural practitioners of Italian ancestry to discuss the history of Italian migration and its cultural impacts in Australia. This example is a good illustration that correlation between the institutional information and urban context data reveals meaningful insights that can help museum explain and better understand their own audiences and development patterns. The capacity of the local engagement power layer to expose this cultural and linguistic diversity information of actual and potential Acme visitors can advance institutional capacities in audiences engagement, as well as inform cultural programming, fundraising, and economic development. However, applying a finer-grained data with such a level of demographic detail for calculating local engagement power across 200 neighborhoods in Melbourne was not an easy task. It required an aggregation of reliable and consistent census data provided to the project by the Australian Urban Research Infrastructure Network, or ORIN, that supported the project through data access and focused consultations. The experience of the deep mapping project demonstrates the importance of reliable and comprehensive data aggregation. This remains a challenging task for researchers who in many cases deal with non-consistent, non-complete, urban or state and even federal level data collected through multiple methodological approaches and are dispersed across different sources. While data aggregation stage is a foundation for successful development and implementation of the big data cultural analytical research, data visualization level is crucial to transform a vast amount of different data sets into a platform for knowledge aggregation. Data analysis through computational visualization is an important level of cultural analytic research that can help produce new knowledge. This happens through a strategic data processing and targeting and interpretation in a specific context driven by a project key research goals and objectives. A key challenge in analyzing large data sets has been to transform the raw data into a dynamically curated data, contextualized data, and deep knowledge. Big data visualization models and methodologies are quite diverse and complex and range from network visualization to word clouds to mapping solutions that can be applied accordingly to generate the most critical insights and highlight important findings. The project Deep Mapping tested the soft power measurement framework and was predominantly based on geovisualization of multiple sets of data to assess museum soft power. This approach applied a geographic information system or digital system for handling, processing, analyzing, and visualizing complex set of data that has a geographic dimension. Deep mapping is interdisciplinary methodology that facilitates the integration of different types of data through a cartographic display that aims to visualize and evaluate interrelationships, coexistence, and processes of complex phenomena. In the project of developing the Museums of Power Map application, the methodology of deep mapping provided an effective tool of an accurate integration of different sets of research data across museum resources, outputs, networks, and impacts to expose correlations of data and processes happening on different levels of soft power analysis. This method allowed the identification of measurable sources of museums of power. It reveals how different indicators relate to local factors which shape social and economic context of museum influence. Each of the layers in the system measures the attraction power in different countries by calculating a power index. And this index is a weighted sum of several key normalized indicators based on specific data in correlation to social demographic variables for each country or city. The scale from 0 to 100 for each of these indices progress in a linear fashion, not logarithmically, and the score allows a comparison of different countries, and in combination with color coding, the system reveals geographic areas of missed opportunities or identifies zones of maximum influence. For example, the first layer, collection appeal power index, demonstrates the global cultural and linguistic diversity and scope of ACME collections, highlighting the geographic areas of their origins. It maps the ACME online catalog of 4,000 films, which exist in 49 different languages. The collection of ACME is pretty diverse, with 70% of movies produced outside Australia. The collection appeal power takes into consideration such characteristics of the collections as the country and language of the production, cultural content representing a specific country, social media representation of the country, as well as its social demographic profile and data on physical mobility of the population, including tourism, ancestry, and immigration from this particular country to Melbourne. The layer explicitly demonstrates that the diversity of museum collections is heavily skewed towards developed economies with power film industries. For example, France, among those countries with quite high collection power appeal index. The Acme archive includes a unique collection of fiction and documentaries produced in France. In total, there are more than 1,500 items. The collection has a unique history. In 2002, the ambassador of France to Australia, Pierre Vieux, granted custodianship of the French embassy collections of all films that they had to Acme. And this was the history of the development of the first, French films in the Acme collections. The majority of these films are in French language, of course, and this increases, of course, the potential probability for the collection's discoverability and content access among French population. The visibility of the French culture among Acme programming is also pretty strong. For example, in 2017, Acme conducted a screening season Jean-Pierre Melville, The Outsider, showcasing the most essential and iconic work of the French director, such as Army of Shadows. The second layer, the Online Engagement Power Index, maps the geographic diversity of Acme global audiences, and it shows the size and density of online website visitors, as well as followers and subscribers to Acme social networking spaces. The layer draws on the museum website visitation records and social media statistics collected from Facebook to YouTube channels and TripAdvisor. The intensity of the blue color highlighting countries with the most engaged Acme online audiences enables a quick snapshot of institutional digital influence on the world map, demonstrating unequal distribution of power across geographic areas. The layer helps quickly reveal where the museum online visitors come from, while posing very challenging questions about why audiences coming from certain countries are more engaged than others. For example, Online Engagement Power Index in Taiwan reaches 33. Even though it is considerably low in comparison, for example, with the UK, which has the index of 59, or New Zealand, which has the index of 100, it is extremely high when compared to the index in China, which is just 0. Taking into account that the majority of Chinese audiences do not have access to the most of the global social media spaces like Facebook or YouTube, Taiwanese seem to enjoy a much stronger connectivity through their online channels where Acme engages its local and international audiences. With the Facebook engagement index reaching 50, Taiwan online audiences demonstrates a rather strong level of engagement with Acme online activities. This gives us an insight into a high potential to attract more Chinese audiences by using national digital channels, like, for example, WeChat. The third layer, Global Connectivity Power Index, maps Acme international networks of partners, collaborators, and contacts that in the past decades worked with the museum on various cross-cultural projects, curatorial and artistic exchanges. The layer maps links between Acme and its 185 institutional partners in around 80 cities around the world on all continents. Not only it exposes the global ecosystem of Acme in terms of its institutional network connectivity, the layer also helps measure the strength and durability of these links, progressing from mere one-time collection exchange, marked as the weakest link, to organizational collaborations, and finally, to long-term partnerships known as the strongest connection. The digital storytelling component accompanying this layer helps illuminate details about historic collaborations of Acme across the globe through digital hyperlinked annotations. As the map demonstrates, the majority of these institutional links have been established with cultural organizations and museums in North America and also Europe. For example, one of the most connected countries in Europe is Germany, with a global connectivity power index reaching 100. Acme is connected with dozens of organizations in Germany located in 10 different cities. For example, in Munich with the Goethe Institute, a German cultural organization operating internationally across 98 countries from Portugal to Philippines. Acme and Goethe Institute have had multiple connections throughout the years, with the most recent one implemented in 2016 through the screening of Manifesto by acclaimed German artist Julian Rosenfeld. Let's now move to the final layer of your research. Data intelligence is a more advanced model of strategic data curation that enables organizations to explore, analyze, and organize large amounts of complex data, not only to assess their previous performance, but more importantly, to forecast and predict their future development. Scalable algorithms that employ data to extract insights and further build on recognized patterns significantly harness data curation architecture and improve the quality of generated knowledge compared to more traditional data visualization methods. Specifically, most recently, the Deep Mapping project employed algorithmic models of soft power evaluations going beyond mere assessment of results accomplished by the museum in the past. The project developed a prototype solution for predicting soft power of museum traveling exhibitions in specific geographic areas by prognosing how local variables of different locales affect and correlate with existing museum resources and targeted outputs to achieve desirable outcomes. This forecast system builds on data first collected and analyzed through the local engagement power layer that maps Acme touring exhibitions in different hosting museums and cities around the world. Since 2012, two Acme blockbusters such as Game Masters and DreamWorks Animation have been hosted by 16 museums in a dozen of countries. This layer draws on a large amount of data describing local context of hosting cities and museums, including three main types of key indicators. First, it's an urban context, second, museum context, and finally, attraction power. Urban context data includes multiple variables that reflect the level of the city's global exposure and cultural infrastructure correlated with the total urban population, migration, and tourist visitation rates. Museum context data shows quantitative characteristics of a hosting institution, demonstrating its international visibility and online representation and power. And the attraction power data mostly consists of the statistics on visitors to this exhibition during the hosting period. So in May 2019, the Museum Soft Power Map application launched a new layer, the Local Engagement Power Forecast. It predicts the soft power of the museum, a recent touring exhibition, which is called Wonderland. This exhibition was exceptionally well received in Melbourne in 2018, inviting almost 200,000 on-site visitors. And this layer forecasts the attraction power of this traveling or touring exhibition in potential hosting cities across continents. Employing algorithmic modeling and drawing on the results of measuring the soft power of previous traveling exhibitions, the mapping system calculates potential local impacts of the traveling blockbuster. Beyond the urban and museum context variables, this layer also draws on online engagement power and cultural relevance index, adding more factors to predict the local attraction power. This allows a more accurate forecast of the attendance numbers of this exhibition to calculate its potential outcomes in different geographic locations. The local engagement power forecast is based on the prediction model of linear regression that combines a specific set of numeric input values to predict outputs. It employs supervised machine learning algorithm as a subset of artificial intelligence. It builds a mathematical model of a set of data that contains both the input and forecasted output that consist of training examples. And these training examples are refined and upgraded each time when the actual outputs are received. In this way, this machine learning algorithm trains a model that dynamically possesses new available data to make more accurate predictions. For example, among 17 potential cities where Wonderland might travel in the next decade, from Los Angeles to Taipei, the prediction model of linear regression forecasted Singapore and Wellington in New Zealand to be among the leading receiving cities in the Asia Pacific, with the local engagement power forecast indices reaching 59 and 78 respectively. The forecast is based on the first iteration input data collected from a series of DreamWorks animation blockbuster exhibition that proved to be very successful among Asia-Pacific audiences. The exhibition traveled in the region in 2015 up to 2017 and was hosted by a number of museums, including the Art Science Museum in Singapore, the Papua Museum in New Zealand, and the Seoul Museum of Art in South Korea. The Wonderland's actual visitation numbers recently collected from Art Science and the Papua Museum, in fact, proved the forecast calculations to be quite accurate. The second iteration input information provided valuable data to feed the local attraction forecast machine learning algorithm that will obtain a higher degree of precision once Wonderland will travel to other cities across the globe, generating different attraction power in different locations to supply more input data. In the case of Wellington and Singapore, the first results of the forecast algorithm, though convincingly proved urban and museum context data, as well as online engagement factors, to be important and useful variables that affect travel and exhibitions visitation and attraction power, making the forecast algorithm modeling possible. Before I finish my lecture today, it is important to address important critiques of cultural analytics and data-intensive research as a valid methodology to explore different aspects of culture as well as arts and cultural management. Some scholars argue that these methods substitute knowledge generation and production of theory with mere visualization. Data-driven research is often accused in its inability to scale down for micro-insights and deeper knowledge of specific details. Furthermore, any data visualization or artificial intelligent algorithm can inherit a bias because it is produced by humans and exhibit a certain degree of subjectivity. Finally, it was argued that digital mapping produces a positivist image of explored phenomena and fails to move from geographic information as a system to geographic information as a science. In response to these concerns, I would like to stress that big data analytics and visualization is, first of all, of course, it's a method to draw patterns, relationships, and tendencies in order to suggest hypotheses based on vast set of cultural data. For instance, my application employs geographic information system not simply as a set of tools to display, all this data on museum cultural assets, international activities, audiences, and networks, but primarily as an inductive exploratory research platform that helps to articulate important questions and hypotheses requiring further research and analysis. A geospatial comparison prompts multiple questions, including but not limited to such themes as digital inequalities and digital imperialism, economic power of creative industries, political and cultural implications of protectionist media policies concerning digital access, remember the case of China, censorship, and freedom of expression. Yes, the system cannot provide accurate micro insights into particular questions, but it offers a macro picture that helps posing, validating, and exploring bigger questions of global cultural, social, and political geography. In fact, it provides a knowledge system to pave an avenue for a long-term research endeavor. For example, the pilot application has been instrumental to reveal the rapidly changing nature of museum power, shifting from hard material power resources of historical artifacts to the digital post-industrial economy of creative content. This is evident when one compares two layers. First, the multicultural geography of museum collections with the potential appeal to global publics, and the actual social geography of audience engagement limited to few countries of developed economies with stronger global connectivity and access. I hope that my lecture today was not only useful and interesting, but also maybe inspiring for further development of the cultural analytics as a data-intensive research in arts and cultural management. I'm happy to answer all your questions right now, and please feel free to connect if you would like somehow to continue a conversation later. Thank you for your attention today.
Thank you very much, Natalia. That was fascinating. Really so interesting to see how it works, and I'm in awe of your multiple skills. I do have a few questions, but I'll just wait and see if anyone else in the chat has first. I can ask one of my low part. Did you do a lot of the programming yourself?
Okay, yes, it's a very good question, very interesting question. Due to time limits, I missed one part that I need to acknowledge. So this is a collaborative research. I was a lead CI on the project, but also I worked with 17 research assistants who were the graduate students of Arts and Cultural Management program, MA program at the University of Melbourne. And these students worked on this project as a part of their research internships. So I had 3 cohorts of groups who worked on this for only 1 semester. So it's 3 consecutive semesters of different cohorts of students who worked on different, different tasks, visualization, data collection, data analysis tasks of museums. Of course, many of this data collection process are automated, but also there, the human insight in the data and the data collection was really important. And there are all the students, so I have actually a dedicated website that features all those students who worked on the project. And I'm happy to share the link if you want, who worked on small research tasks. Each student took only 1 small task, for example, collecting cultural analytics data for cities. And they, for example, one of my students, Eliza Cole, she collected, cultural and social demographic statistics for different cities in Europe and Asia Pacific. And then this data was, integrated into the mapping system. And of course, this project was funded by the University of Melbourne through the engagement grant, and the money was spent to outsourcing of their mapping solution itself. So I'm a visual designer or a conceptual designer of this program, but I worked with an IT company who helped me to, to take my ideas and, to implement them through the digital technologies to produce this, application system. But I must say that all the mapping can be actually done through free data visualization tools that are available online. Even on the Google, you can use Google Mapping to map all these different layers together. And some of my students experimented with this a lot. So, and finally, we were able, to put all these layers together through these application. Yeah, thank you for this question.
Okay, that's really interesting. I have a follow-up question that I just thought of on the methodology. And then I'll give a space for everybody else to ask questions because I could monopolize all the time. How did you develop the deep mapping layers? Was it, did you kind of come up with it all at one time, or did it evolve over time?
No, I started, so, you know, before moving to the digital humanities research and before doing this, you know, very elaborated work in cultural analytics, I actually spent around 10 years of my academic life exploring cultural diplomacy, soft power, and museums. And I'm a big fan of Joseph Nye research. And first, I come up with this system where I tried to kind of to outline and to put on a specific scale different methods that exist that maps either public diplomacy or cultural diplomacy activities, or try to measure soft power. And my observation was that all these different methods, for example, network analysis or public perceptions analysis, or, you know, assessing resources, they were employed by researchers separately all the time, looking at only one stage in the progression of soft power development. And I thought, but this is not actually soft power. It's only one small component of soft power. So I thought, how I could actually, you know, combine all this together in order to, you know, look at soft power as a more comprehensive model and concept. And as a result, I think deep mapping came up as a solution. And this is how all this methodology progressed. So thank you for the question.
It's really interesting. It's always really interesting to hear, because when it's presented, it seems so, you know, so logical and straightforward. And I know from experience that these projects never are. There's always multiple paths you could go down and multiple ways and answers. So it's really interesting to hear part of that process of development, I think. I have one more question, but I will wait. I'll just wait and see if anyone in the group has any questions. There's one from Joya there. Can you see it?
Yes, so there is a question. When you were discussing the online engagement power in the video, areas like China and Russia were not light up. Is this due to a lack of access to their online data? No, there is an access to Russian data because there is no, you know, censorship, and there's no strict regulations in terms of using social networks in Russia, like YouTube or Facebook. But the engagement power in Russia is actually pretty low, just because of many factors, because not so many are, you know, maybe films in the collection of ACME. There are not so many activities that ACME implements in order to engage Russian audiences. And in terms of China, their potential is very, very high to engage these audiences, because every year, you know, thousands of new Chinese citizens join Melbourne, and they are pretty much engaged with the ACME activities and collections and programming. But you know, because of all these troubles with their censorship and access to digital networks, Chinese audiences stay unengaged. And ACME does not so far use local or Chinese social media and networks to communicate and interact with their Chinese audiences. So I think they will move forward to engage with these new audiences, which is huge, you know, because even on this mapping, like I already mentioned, that example with the Taiwan audiences who enjoys a little bit more of accessibility and connection to digital networks, they already demonstrate a very high engagement with the online activities of ACME, which shows that the potential is there. But in order to reach this potential, they need to actually to user networks that are available in China. And I know that many museums right now, and especially during the pandemic, and especially in the UK, for example, the Victoria and Albert Museum or British Museum, they use live streaming platforms of China to communicate with millions of their followers and audiences. So because they understand the potential and the value of this audience and the potential, the value of this market. Thank you for your question. There is another question from Emma.
Emma, I just say Emma is nearing the end of her PhD in Queen's, which is an interdisciplinary PhD research on the perceived provenance, space, and appropriated ritual responses on the understanding of sacred objects. So she's looking at spatial theory, architectural theory, cultural studies, and museum display. She has been leading the seminars with the students on research methods for this semester. So she is obviously very interested in how you might be able to use this for smaller projects, even for individual projects.
So yeah, I actually, in the past, I taught a course which is called Big Data Visualization. So, and I cannot in 5 minutes, and I cannot even in one lecture to explain all the details of this methodology, how to use it, how to collect the data, how to clean the data, how to process the data for visualization, how to choose a most meaningful way to visualize data through mapping or through different other, visualization tools. So in the course that I taught, we actually used free online tools available for everybody to play with the big data and visualize them. And there are a lot of them. So it requires, like, for example, I know that you have this course in research methods, and in this course you have different, components of what research methods are available. In order to, to engage with this kind of component, one lecture is definitely not enough. So I focused in my lecture today just demonstrating what is possible with this. But in order for me to teach you how to do this, it requires at least a couple of more lectures to help you to understand, because this is not as difficult or challenging as might seem. Everything is possible, and as the result of my course, many of my students produce their own data visualization systems, mapping, or infographic systems that were really meaningful media objects communicating different valuable insights into the data sets with which they worked. So, but thank you for asking. I thought about how to, make this lecture the most valuable for you. And I thought that maybe just demonstrating so far and encouraging the interest will be more important at this stage than just going into deep details, how to, work with big data.
I think you're right. Thank you for that. That's really interesting. Natalia, I know you have to leave shortly because it's 4 now. So are there any final questions from anyone?
Okay, if there are any other questions, that my contact information is available on the last slide. I recorded the lecture and I will send the link to the lecture to you. So you are very welcome to contact me if you would like for example, to work closer with big data and cultural analytics for your research projects, and just feel free to ask a piece of advice, or maybe just to discuss any ideas that you might have. Thank you very much for your attention today, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.